Thank you, Patrick. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 13th regular meeting of Walpole Select Board. Let's stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so first order of business today is we're going to have Chief Kelleher give us the quarterly update. So, Chief, come on up.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good to see everybody again. So I'll start off with some of the more notable incidents that have occurred in the past quarter. In early summer, late spring, we had a rash of catalytic converter thefts. People were going around in all communities around here cutting out catalytic converters from underneath cars. Some were actually in occupied parking lots during the day, kind of brazen. So our detectives began investigating the rash of those. Some of them did go unsolved, unfortunately, but we were able to get some leads on one that occurred on Norfolk Street. And we were able to take an individual from Bridgewater into custody on that case, which was really kind of a win for us, given though very difficult to solve. Also in early June, a robbery occurred behind the 1A Plaza. Investigation by our detective division revealed that that an individual was selling a gold chain on Facebook. The victim was robbed of the property. And through investigation, review of cameras, and information sharing with other agencies, they were able to take an individual from Rhode Island into custody on that case. It took a little while to solve that one, but they did a nice job on that as well. And finally, there was a breaking and entry that occurred to a family who, while they were actually attending a wake, someone broke into the home and stole a large amount of jewelry out of their home on East Street back in March. And investigators were finally able to identify a suspect using a variety of investigative tools, which I'll leave anonymous for the purposes of their investigations, but an individual from Brockton was taken into custody in that case, and again, very well done investigation by our detective division. Statistically, we had
Actually,
4,000.
before you move on, and without delving into details, I just wanted to comment. I thought that 3 of these were really superb pieces of police work, and have resulted in some good outcomes. So really, really, really well done.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And,
Yeah.
It means a lot. Yeah, they work very hard.
Yeah.
The use of technology and various search warrants was, really worked in our advantage. They do take some time, unfortunately, but they were able to hold those people accountable. And it'd be nice to get property back, especially stuff that means a lot to victims. But to hold someone accountable for that is a big win, especially for us. So
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. So in terms of stats, call volume was up a little bit in quarter 3, to over 4,700 calls. We had 25 arrests, up from 16 in quarter 2, and unfortunately we're up to now 17 drug overdoses, 2 of which were fatalities. Again, our detectives continue their outreach after each one of these events, and they follow up with the families, offer resources, and they also conduct investigations into the source of where those drugs are coming from. In terms of Longview Farm, we had 51 calls for service up there in quarter 3, up from 28 in the second quarter. Kids are back in school up there. We get a little increase in call volume, kids getting adjusted. We're still down from our calls in 2021. We have 131 calls up there compared to 252 last year. Again, our mentors that work up there do a tremendous job of communicating, sharing information, and really getting those kids the help that they need and helping them live a better quality of life up there. Mental health calls year to date were 412 calls, up from this time last year. We had 374. 149 were in this quarter. So again, we're on kind of our track how we've been in the past several years with these calls. It's kind of been a steady. We're on track to be where we were last year. That leads me to the clinician update. The grant has been fully funded by DPH. We're now in the hiring process to fill that position. We did have an individual come in for an interview in the end of July, and unfortunately that person decided to go another avenue. So we're still actively recruiting. Riverside is doing the hiring on that and screening out folks based on their skill set, but we are certainly involved in that to make sure we get the right people for that job. So I'm hoping we can have some candidates come in and get this thing filled soon, because again, once we get the person in, we'll be off and running. So looking forward to that. In terms of traffic, I know Gill Street was discussed in previous meetings. I will speak with Chief Bailey and his unique set of circumstances with his trucks getting up there, but we haven't experienced any complaints to us on that. But again, if the fire department's having some issues with that, they can certainly speak to that. But we haven't had a ton of problems with that since it's been closed. Obviously, it's an inconvenience, but I think folks have gotten used to it, given the traffic pattern down there. I won't hold the bridge company to this, but it looks like they're moving along pretty quick on that project down there. So I'm hoping we can get North Street back sooner rather than later than they initially anticipated. But it does look like they're moving right along down there, so I'm hoping that'll be squared away. I just want to touch on South Walpole real quick. I know it's been discussed kind of almost ad nauseum, and I don't want to continue to bang the drum on it, but I just wanted to thank the residents for their patience down there. It was really bad for a while until we kind of moved some things around. So I appreciate their feedback, their patience, helping us kind of fix that problem, which has seemed to gone well since we've had those two concerts. So hopefully with Patriot season will be a little more smooth down there, and we can keep this going as we have. But I also want to take a moment to thank the officers that worked those concerts. We kind of put out the all points on this to say, hey, we need some help down here. Please come in and help us out. We can't have these spots go unfilled. And they all came in, they all worked, they gave time with their families, so on summer weekends, and that means a lot to me and certainly to the residents. You can have all the plans in the world, but if people don't come down and man those posts, we're getting nowhere. So that'll be that on South Walpole, I hope, for a while anyways. An update on accreditation. We are as close to being ready for assessments for accreditation as we've ever been. A huge thanks to Lieutenant Zangetti, our accreditation manager. Spent a tremendous amount of time auditing every piece of evidence that we have in our evidence room, making sure it's all accounted for and on the proper storage location. This is a task that, including myself when I was a detective supervisor, it's overwhelming at times. He embedded himself down there for several months and cleaned everything up, made sure everything was squared away with the help of our detective division. So huge thanks to Lieutenant Zangetti on that. And as soon as he finished that, we were getting ready for our assessments in November, and MPAC came out with version 6 of new standards, so now we're updating all of our policies. This has been kind of on the horizon for some time, but now that we can get this squared away and all of our policies updated to be in line with these standards, we'll be in great shape, and I definitely expect when the next window opens for assessments in March, we will be an accredited police agency. So very proud of the work those folks have done, and I'm looking forward to having that accomplishment. In terms of personnel, Officer John Holmes and Anthony Antonelli finished their academy training on July 20th, and they've begun their 12-week field training program. They're both doing well, and I expect them to be assigned to a shift on their own in October, counting towards staffing. Officers Maggie McCrossan and Will Benter, who were before your board the last time I was here in May, have also completed their field training and are adapting well to their assignments. They both came from police departments previously, so they've adapted well to doing business with us. So they're doing well, so that's good. We're now working to fill 3 open spots to get to our authorized strength of 48 officers. We're at 45 right now. We have candidates in the works. We're doing background investigations as we speak. So I suspect that we will be back before your board for appointment sometime in the very near future to get our staffing levels to where we need to be. Some community involvement we've been participating in the past quarter. We did a Rad Kids class where autistic residents from Longview Farm came down and participated in the class. The officers taught them the curriculum for that course and safety and awareness, and it was a very successful mission for those young kids. Those kids were all from Longview Farm, so it was nice to have them in. Officers went to the Juneteenth festival, which is obviously held on June 19th on the Common. Officers George Bird and Heather Van Ass chaperoned several kids from Longview Farm to attend the festivities for that event. And it was, the officers said they all had a great time. Families had a good time. It was a very well-attended event, so we were proud to see that. New this year on the 4th of July, SRO Hart spearheaded an event by the police union, and I can't say enough about our union. They've been really taking the bull by the horns to raise money for community policing initiatives on their own. They're buying stuff to give out to kids. It's tremendous to see what they're doing. But Officer Hart took it upon himself to have July 4th patriotic themed patches made, community resource dog shirts that we handed out to kids, sold to the community, and they didn't last, I don't think, 2 hours at the fireworks on the 2nd of July. So it was great. They had to have more shirts made, and they're continuing that initiative. So that's been great community involvement. We've finished our 11th and 12th classes of our Junior Police Academy, which is the 6th year of that program. We had over 59 kids go through that program this year alone. So again, that's going strong, and we're hoping that we can even add a 3rd week next year because it was so popular. Great also work by our dispatchers union. They're beginning a school supply drive. They're collecting school supplies for kids that might need it in our lobby. And again, getting those to the folks that need them for this coming school year, so every kid has what they need So great job by them as well. Finally, our evening shift officers took it upon themselves. They kind of felt like everything was going on in the day, so they took it upon themselves to have a Cones with the Cop event down at Scoops, right down on Main Street. It was so very well attended. They were like surprised by how many people were there that showed up for the event. And it was the night before school started, so everybody got out of the house one last night of summertime and enjoyed themselves. So Sergeant Pat O'Connor put that together, and Officer Rick Ordway on the evening shift. Great on him for coming up with an idea on his own and making it happen. So my thanks to them. And finally, a real quick plug for our road race, which is on October 2nd at 10 a.m. For the 5K, 9:30 for the 1 mile fun run down at the PD, running through the trails out behind there. So again, that's all been sponsored by our union to raise some money for community policing efforts, and my training for that will start tomorrow, I promise. So that is all I have. If there's any questions, we'll have to take.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions or comments for the Chief? Ben?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate all the information. You had talked about the grant funded position that we're actively recruiting for.
Yes.
What was the title of that position?
It's a JDP clinician, a jail diversion clinician.
JDP clinician. Thanks. Yeah, and looking at the numbers, and I know that you just covered it, so I won't go back through it. But I mean, we're trending this year to have as many mental health calls as we did in the past 2 years, and possibly more. So it's something where we were all kind of hoping we get on the backside of the pandemic. Maybe that eases, and other things are going on. Things would maybe go back to normal per se, but certainly it doesn't appear that way, at least this year. So I think that position is going to be as important.
We had, the individual that had come in was extremely qualified and was local, and we were very, very excited about that going into play.
Yeah.
Probably by now at this point. Unfortunately, factors that I don't have knowledge of took that person in another direction. But
it happens. Yeah.
It does, and that's I think it's a difficulty with finding the right people. So we're hoping that we can get some people in very, very soon, because you're 100% right that there's a spot that really needs to be filled.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Just a comment real quick on the subject of personnel. So you said we're trying to get to 48 officers. Obviously, we have 3 vacancies, and I talked to you briefly about your strategy, which is to reach out to candidates who are post academy, who already have the training, so we don't have to wait for that process to unfold.
Correct.
And are you having some success with that? Because I do know there's a process, but there's also probably a longer list of people pre-academy. So I'm just curious about that strategy and how that's working.
So we had just got 2 officers out of the academy that started on the road right now, which is great. We love hiring folks off of our list that show interest in our department, local people, if possible. We use the Transit Police Academy as our training program. They're one of the best academies in the state, and we use them primarily. We will use other ones if possible. So the reason why we had gone with trying to take some transfer officers to fill, 2 spots that had come up, this past spring, was more of a quick, kind of not a quick fix, but bring qualified officers in a more timely manner. It is working well right now. We have 3 candidates we're doing backgrounds on right now.
Okay.
But of course, we go back to our list all the time, because their academy will be coming back up again late winter. If we were unable to fill all 3 of these spots right now, we would go off of our hire list and put those folks in the academy.
How about like a joint strategy where you did the post-academy with the transfer candidates, and also you put candidates through the academy, knowing that once we get to 48, it's very likely that we'll have another retirement, we'll have another transfer, maybe out of Walpole to another department.
Correct. Yeah.
So I wonder if you could sort of almost anticipate going from 48 to 47, and does that happen once a year? Do we lose an officer?
So on average, we lose just over an officer. It's like 1.2 when I calculated out officers per year. So we try to put an officer in the budget every year to make sure we're replacing that person, or based upon how things work out with the budget and staffing and a myriad of other factors that come up. But we do know we have an officer retiring this year in April. So we've already made arrangements that individual we will most certainly put into an academy setting prior to that, and just to get them ready to go, so that we were ahead of the game when it comes to that. So, some folks we don't see leave, and that can be difficult to plan for, but we try to do the best we can to stay ahead of that, so we don't drop way down.
And I guess I don't know what the risk is of putting a candidate through the academy, and we would have to work this with the budget, and potentially not having anybody leave, and being at 49 officers, even though you're authorized for 48. A good problem to have. We're fully staffed. We would need to find the money for that 49th officer. But knowing that we're going to likely have that attrition, and if we get it a little bit wrong, or we're off by a little bit, at least we're sort of forecasting, and we're not playing catch up. It's a bigger picture question, and I just wanted to
Yeah,
mention it to you.
again, Jim and I talk regularly about, you know, how we can best keep the department staffed, and
Yeah.
a lot of that comes to
That's all it
funding,
is.
et cetera, and
Yeah.
well, it's always a topic of conversation when him and I speak, and,
Yeah.
you know, he's been great about, you know, making sure that we have enough people, and
Yeah.
we actively, as soon as someone may leave, we immediately start the ball rolling to get someone back in there, so.
That's the goal.
Yeah, it's, yeah, you can certainly get yourself jammed up a little bit if you overhire, but, you know, I think it's always good to have that on the horizon to make sure, you know, we don't drop tremendous amounts.
I agree, thanks.
Yeah, I'd actually be less concerned about overhiring and more concerned about underhiring. And it seems as though we're never actually fully staffed. At least
Okay.
that's the way it feels to me. And I know Chief Bailey, we have the same problem there. So we've said to Chief Bailey in the past, look, just hire. And, you know, we'll worry about it as it goes along. But, you know, try to be at full staff is key. And there's always that unknown that happens where someone leaves. And I don't even know if I can remember the last time that, you know, we were fully staffed on both police and fire. Been a long time.
It has, I think we're at the most offices we've ever had right now,
Yeah.
45, and
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
But yes, it would be great to hit that magic number and stay there for a while.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Anything
have
else?
one-
Ally?
I'm all set.
One follow-up question on the clinician and the grant. So is this a grant, can you just tell me about the timeline of the grant and where we're having a difficult time hiring, how that does that have an impact on the grant? And then hopefully, once we find that person, will we be able to continue that within our budget? Is that?
Yeah, so, so in the first year, the first 2 years, it's fully funded by DPH. So yes, once we're having a hard time getting someone in here, that could affect how much time is fully funded. And then it drops down to 25% funded by our budget to 50 to 75 until it finally runs out at the end. So eventually we'd have to absorb that person in down the road in several years. So yes, it is on my mind about, you know, how long it's taken to bring somebody in. Like I said, we were hopeful this summer that we would have the right person, and it did seem like the right person to me, but again, people.
Not an easy position right now to fill.
Right. Yeah, it's a difficult job, and I can understand that. I mean, our officers do it all every day, and it'd be nice to have someone that's trained, certified, licensed to help us, especially with overdose outreach too. Our detectives are doing that on their own, and to have someone that's certified in that, and this individual was certified, so it was kind of a disappointing, but yes, I feel I share your concerns. It's certainly on my mind for sure.
That was it.
Chief, thanks very much. Very comprehensive report, a great update, and please make sure you pass on to your team that we really appreciate the great work they do every day.
I will certainly do that. Thank you. I
Chief.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, next up, Chief Bailey, our fire chief, also a quarterly report. Hi, Chief.
Hello, thank you and good evening. Last time I was before you was on May 24th. Since that time, we've had 4 structure fires here in town. We went to a 4th alarm in Plainville, 2nd alarm in Medfield, working fire in Foxborough, 2nd alarm in Medfield, 3rd alarm in Norwood, 2nd alarm in Norwood, and we were also involved with the forestry task force out to Marlboro 3 weeks ago with the dry conditions. So as you can see, we've had a very busy summer with incidents. Our total calls to date from January 1, 2,912 emergency calls, 2,409 permits and inspections for a total of 5,321. Fire Prevention Division continues to be very active. They just completed their school inspections prior to school starting, and all of our fire drills were completed last week. One of our initiatives has been to be more proactive with our fire prevention. That was one of the things that we wanted to do when we first started the program a couple of years ago. Then COVID hit. It made it very difficult for us to be proactive and do inspections. So everything was kind of reactive to whatever happened. Since that time, we've started to get into the buildings now and do proactive inspections. So that's what we're working on right now with our Fire Prevention Division. Route 1A and Gill Street, honestly, at Gill Street has not been as much of an issue as we had anticipated, although the traffic has increased dramatically since the start of the school season. Actually, 1A itself is more of an issue with us. It really slows down our response. As you can imagine, those that travel it every day, it's not in the best shape. We understand it's a construction zone and it's going to take time, but it definitely slows down our responses anywhere on the 1A stretch that's under construction. Ambulance current balance in the account is $2,041,219. I'm looking to come back before the board in December or thereabouts with a recommendation for a possible increase. It looks like the ambulance rates will be going up significantly on the Medicare side, and in order to stay in line with that, hopefully I can come before the board with something either at the next quarterly or just prior to the next quarterly to discuss, so that we're online for the January timeframe when the ambulance rates normally change for us. So that is something that I'll be looking to do in December and January. The current budget, no major issues at this time, as we're just starting into the budget only a couple months in. On the capital end of things, the 2 engines that were ordered a year ago had a 550-day delivery date. Those are due in May of '23. New ambulance that was ordered, and we pushed it ahead last spring when we did the capital. The closest date they'll give us for that right now is September 24th of '24. And the reason being is they're having a hard time getting chassis. As soon as they get a chassis for the truck, that time frame will change. I'm hoping that'll be sooner rather than later, but that's the best that they'll give us at this point in time. This year's capital, we have a new command car in there and upgrades to our SCBA air packs and bottles, which is our breathing apparatus that we wear. The grants, there hasn't been much change with the grants. We're still waiting on the 2 grants that we applied for last year. The AFG grant, which is for training, and the SAFER grant, which is for an additional 4 firefighters. Those were delayed as far as the announcements go. The announcements have started. We have not heard anything on them as of yet, so I'll keep the board updated as those progress. On training, this summer we did a lot with boat operations down on New Pond, and we have our paramedic fresher, which is upcoming. We recently had 1 resignation that took effect last Friday. That individual is leaving for another department down south. We had a couple of our firefighters graduate since the last time we met. Firefighter Elizabeth Hunt graduated on June 24th, and firefighter Francesca Angelini graduated in August. We have 4 recruits, Christopher Malloy, Jocelyn Jenks, Jason Grant, and Joseph Lafrenia, going to the academy next week on September 19th. They will graduate on November 28th. They will be at the Stowe campus. In October, Michael Curran will be going to the Stowe campus. In November, Michael Shea will be going to the Bridgewater campus. In January, Jared Fahey will be going to the Stowe campus. And the opening that we have from the resignation, which we're trying to fill, and we've known about that for about 3 weeks now. We've had it out there posted. We're having a hard time gaining candidates, but they are slowly trickling in, so we're going through that process. Right now, the academy is filling March, April of next year, so it's still a long process in order to get somebody into the academy. Injuries, we have 1 injury that's been long-term. It's still in process. It's with the retirement board, and it's in process and well on its way at this point. Night before the 4th was held this year on July 2nd. It was a great night. A little bit less turnout than we had anticipated, but not bad for the first time back in 3 years. So we're looking to get it back online with the 3rd next year, and we're working with the company, hoping that that will happen. And our open house will be returning this year after a 3-year hiatus. We'll be doing that at Station 1 on October 8th from 10 to 1. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you, Chief. Questions for the chief, comments?
Just curious on the capital side, those 2 fire trucks and the ambulance have been paid for and the price has been set. That price doesn't change with the...
It has not.
Has not been paid for?
It has not changed.
Oh, it's not changed, yeah.
We don't pay for them until we get them, but the
But the
money
price
is
is-
encumbered.
Yeah, the price is what
One
we've
of
been
them was,
told.
one of the engines was a grant
Yeah.
that the deputy wrote, and the other was from town funds.
Okay, that's good. That's great. And then on the staffing levels, if I can, just, so could you just give me a little bit more perspective? So where are we supposed to be at with the fire department staffing, or what's the maximum staffing, and then where are we now? I know you told us about injuries and graduates and...
So when all of these folks get through the academy that we
Yeah.
currently have, and including the vacancy that I have to fill, we'll be at 2 groups of 11 and 2 groups of 12.
Okay, for 22 and 24, so 46. But where are we now? So we were waiting
Now
on a lot of these dates.
Right now, we're 2 groups of 9 and 2 groups of 10.
18 and 20, so 30, we're at 38, okay. 38 including the injury, the
Correct.
resignation included in that.
So I'm running 2 groups right now at the minimum that was agreed to with the board back when we had COVID, and has been agreed on to keep Station 2 open at this point in time.
Okay.
And then has one float. Two groups have a float, that's the 10.
And then this is just going to the comment that I made to the police chief about trying to get ahead. So so we've talked about filling this resignation, we're having difficulty getting candidates, but perhaps we could even expand beyond the resignation that we know about and start to look at the ones that we don't know about and see who else is out there. So if we're getting multiple candidates, instead of just filling this one spot, perhaps we put more than one person through the academy. Is that an option? Are there risks in doing that?
No, there's not a risk, so the way we have a clause in our contract that allows us to hire medics, and they have 2 years, EMTs, they have 2 years to get their paramedic. We can dib off of that list if we so chose. I'm trying to find someone right now that's actually trained as a firefighter and a paramedic.
Okay.
I have a couple of candidates that may fit that bill. If they don't, then we have to go the other route. And the problem is I have a lot of candidates right now that are in that boat, and it's very hard for us to do scheduling because I have to have a 2-year medic with a brand new medic or 2-year plus medics on for both of them. So it makes scheduling a little bit difficult, but obviously with the long lead times for the academy, we'd like to hire more. Our goal is to actually get I've thrown a lot of numbers out over the years of where the department should be, but where the minimum should be. Right now, the minimum where I'd like to get to, and the goal that I'm shooting for, is 13 a shift.
Okay.
So we need to hire an additional 6, but it's just a matter of figuring out how we do that and the funding for it.
Sure.
The SAFER grant, if it was to come through, would give us another 4, so that would help, but that's the long-term goal right now, is to get to 13.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the numbers you presented us with the people who are either going into the academy or who are graduating and that we know, in November and October and January and beyond. So that'll get us to 46. And I'm just trying to have an eye on the ones that we don't know about, the things that haven't crossed our
Right, so
desk yet.
to get to that number would be 52 for 4 groups. of
Sure.
13.
No, well, that's more of a bigger issue,
Big picture,
bigger
right.
picture budget question. But I'm just trying to make sure that you can get to your 46, so that with these numbers, when you get to 46, anticipating that there's gonna be some other issues that come up between now and then. So,
So we have the retirement issue of, we have several members that.
you don't know.
They
You don't-
could go.
Yeah, they could go,
but
sure.
There's no crystal ball as to when they'll choose to go, so.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Con. Ally?
Just piggybacking on what Glenn just said, and I think we've spoken about this before too, is just that initiative to how do we get to that number, and being that the academy has such a long time to get through, to get spots, to find the candidates, to really be proactive when we can. And let's hope that the grants come through this time.
We're hoping.
Thanks. Chief, good update, and again, very busy time for you and the firefighters on your team, and some awesome work that you guys have been doing. So again, please pass on our thanks to the rest of the team as well. All right?
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, next up, we have a discussion on the proposed Friendly 40B project at 1015 East Street. And so I think we have representatives here from the development group. And before you kick off, what we're gonna go through tonight is a presentation of the plan, the proposal. And one of the things that, for those in the room or who are watching at home, we should be aware of is we call this a friendly 40B because it doesn't follow the same guidelines as I'll call non-friendly 40B. Those non-friendly 40Bs circumvent all of our rules and regs and zoning and planning and all that stuff. The friendly 40B is done a little bit differently, where it's a collaborative effort between the town and the developer, which allows us to get some things in place that we would not ordinarily get in a 40B. It's still one of these things that is somewhat rigid, and the developer has a lot of ability to do things, and we'll talk through those as we go through it tonight. But this one is not an adverse relationship. It is the so-called friendly 40B, to the extent that we can use that word. I think it's an important development that you've got going on. It's on the Gilmore site. I said 1015 East Street. That's the Gilmore site, for those of you who are wondering where that is. So what we're gonna do tonight is go through the proposal. We'll be looking to the board to provide input. Jim, you're looking for us to then direct you to get into a memorandum of approval, or an MOA or an LIP, whatever that's gonna turn into, to incorporate all of the points that come from the board. Obviously, we've given you a lot of feedback already. This isn't the first time that, we've been involved in the discussion. And so with that said, why don't you introduce yourself and take us through the proposal, and then we'll give you the feedback, okay?
Well, Chairman O'Neill and Board of Select, I appreciate your time, and Manager Johnson, it's good to see you. I think you're accurate in that. I do want to also point out one thing. Thank God for the people that just got up in front of us. My job is basically nothing compared to what they do every day, and I think we all need to respect and remember that in today's environment. And
You're here.
that's not pandering. That's just a genuine feeling that I think we all have. So to those people that do those things to protect us and do things we'd never consider putting our lives on the line for, we appreciate them. But on that, my name is Justin Krebs. I'm with Krebs Investor Group. I am a developer. We are very active in 40B. As you described, that is a policy under the state in which an applicant can file for housing if the community and the host community does not have 10% affordable. We typically try to approach from the beginning under a LIP, because we feel, as you described, I think it's very beneficial, both from the town having an influence on both what the project looked like, how it impacts the town and the community, and also the financial benefits that we get. That clarity is beneficial to us as well as the town, because that's a necessity for us to make a project that's going to be successful and work. I will say that Mr. Johnson has done a tremendous job in bringing together us a lot of feedback from all of the departments. I think the effort here has been exemplary, compared to a lot of other communities we work in. That helps us a lot. And I think as a result, I'll run through the project and try to make it relatively quick. I'm going to give a little bit of the front end, and then I really owe a lot of this to our architect, Steve Riegel from Embark. Steve is the one who really creates this, takes the feedback that we've gotten and puts it on paper. So real quickly, I would just say we basically come with a first-class team of consultants, so from everything from civil engineering to traffic to architecture. I won't bore you with those names, but those will be people who have been active and will continue to be active in the project. They are all people who we've worked with in other communities. We've done friendly 40Bs in Medway and a series of other communities, and also even under comprehensive permits in a non-friendly 40B in the traditional sense. It's still been collaborative. Just recently, 2 of the projects we completed are up in Winchester. Hadn't had projects approved since like the 1940s, and we were able to work successfully with them as a community as well. So we pride ourselves on that approach. As I think you highlighted, this is the Gilmore Site. Has been around for quite a long time, but is probably viewed as an underutilized site for this location. You can see the residential just up the road. We think that this is a really positive corridor, and I'll get into some of the site attributes for that. But the pre-existing residential plus the addition of what we propose, I think will make a nice addition to the downtown area. Again, not to bore you with a lot, but generally an underutilized site. That gives a good sense of the site location. You are on East Street, just up from the train station. That really rolls into what we feel are some of the really positive attributes about this site. The infrastructure that's around it, as well as the transportation and the train station, will reduce some of the impacts on the local roadway system. The project design and landscaping is going to further enhance the corridor. We spent a lot of time in the dialogue with you in really trying to shape this. At first, I think we took a more, I'll call it, city view of the landscape and had the building up along the side. And to your point, Chairman O'Neill, the feedback we garnered from the process actually allowed us to develop a space that has a lot more community space, has a lot more respites for people while the pedestrian traffic is going between the train station and different areas downtown for them to stop in. Steve will get into those design elements. We think it meets the demand. The two projects that you have are very successful. We know the Corcoran people who developed one of the two projects, and they are basically at full occupancy at all the time. We are hearing more and more also from community employers. Traditional housing, as appealing as it is to some folks, sometimes does not work with an employer. A lot of the people who are being employed at high tech and other industries are tending to work in a location for a couple of years. So the commitment to a home is sometimes a limiting factor on them on being able to take employment or an employer to secure them, and having this transitional housing is beneficial. It's also very beneficial to community members who have either want to move into the community but can't find a home, particularly with as hard as the housing market is currently today, as well as people who've lived in the community and want to still remain in the community and transition out. As you highlighted, the LIP approach is really one of the best. It's a collaborative process. We define the elements. We work together. The signing of a memorandum of understanding or just the LIP application, which would get signed and then submitted to DHCD, is only the first step. We will be doing the same 6-month plus process that you would do under a 40B, going through the planning board. We'll review everything in detail, from traffic to civil to all of the impacts, as well as the architectural design. So just by saying that you support the concept does not mean that you've given way to us being able to go forward and do anything. There will be a very defined process which will need to be satisfied and meet all of the needs of both the state requirements, town requirements, and then the general desire of what the asset would look like upon completion. And I do think that it is, with both the current growth and with the current needs, affordable housing is a tremendous focus of the state. This is a very good location. We think at 142 units, it allows one large location in a relatively low impact zone that is serviced by public transportation, and will also support the local retail and add more people to the pedestrian community that services that local retail in the area. There are elements we've looked at too. I will tell you that we are now under contract with the two houses next door, which we're going to incorporate into the overall fold. Design-wise, that's probably not going to change the design, but I think from some of the feedback, we heard that some accessibility coming in on the train, some addition coming in for fire and life safety, as well as also the ability to address additional parking on the site would be helpful. We also think that along that line, there's a corridor that we think is a pretty important, I'll call it accessibility component that could potentially work from Main Street to East Main Street, and the connectivity as the downtown's redeveloped. If ever willing, maybe we can help on that in the future. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but we are thoughtful in how that connectivity, whether it's us or some future developer, has, and we would gladly work with a little more guidance on how that would get addressed.
Just before you move, because this is one of my big questions, is where you are with those two parcels.
Yes, so we are fully under purchase and sale
You are,
contract.
okay.
And we have rights basically until we're permitted, and then we would close upon that. That's traditionally how we do the transaction. But we have full control of those sites now too. Earlier, we weren't able to say that because we weren't finally there.
right.
But we are now under control just recently. And
I think
Piggyback, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think that's very beneficial to pick up those two, because one of my big concerns has been the entry and egress to the site, and I know that's a concern of at least the fire chief, and so I'm glad to hear you've got that. I'm going to be very interested to see how you take advantage of those properties now and create a much better in and out system into the facility. That's one of the glaring challenges that I saw, and so I'm really pleased to hear that you've got that underway, and we'll see where you go with it.
well, and I think that's a great thing about the process, right? Collaborative, we understood that concern, and by being able to get ahead of it, we were able to get that project under control. And again, I apologize, we've not been able to, because of the timeline, advance much design on it, but we're really not looking at putting building on it. It's really, as you said, to address access, egress, and also effectively the parking on the site to improve that as well.
Glenn,
I was going to jump in
yeah,
while
go
we
ahead.
don't have to
Yeah,
circle
go
back
ahead.
to it.
Yeah.
So that sounds great, everything you're saying about those two lots. And I realize what we're looking at now doesn't show any potential designs because you haven't had a chance to do that. But so certainly parking is something that should be considered for that spot, emergency access. And then I would just add open space, green space. You've already incorporated that to some degree, so I would just continue to keep that in mind as you look at what is possible over there. You don't necessarily have to fill it up with parking spaces. I'm not saying parking isn't something that should be considered, but it doesn't, you know what I mean? It could be a multiple things.
We agree with
Yeah.
you, and that is a flexibility that created a nice couple of components: accessibility, access from a safety standpoint, and the potential for additional green space and buffer along that remains inviting along that walking corridor for
Sure,
pedestrians.
yeah, thanks for that, yeah.
That said, the pieces that you're probably more important or want to hear a little more is with Steve. Steve Riegel from Embark will walk through the project in detail on the design and how the intent and the site works with that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you to the board. I'm going to try and be brief. And what I'd really like to do is just sort of focus on the process that we had been talking about. So right now, we're talking about a new construction project, multifamily residential apartments, 142 dwelling units with 172 parking spaces proposed, 5 stories of wood construction over 1 story of concrete garage. Initially, when we came to the city, we engaged with the city in the spring of 2021, and we brought a project that had more of an initial urban approach, where we had pulled our building out to the street, and that first floor level was actually elevated from the street. And through that process, we made a first round of great initial changes to the project. First, we reduced the unit count down from 148 to 142. The biggest move was we reoriented the building away from East Street, and we tilted it to create 3 or 4 opportunities for public parks that could really come and engage with East Street. We enlarged the fire truck turn around at the rear of the property and provided a 5-foot clear around the building after discussions with the fire department. During this time, we also established off-street loading and trash zones, and we pulled the primary floor down to street level, which pushed the garage down, and relocated our active uses down onto East Street. So the uses were no longer half a story up and overlooking. They're really down at these pocket areas that engage in the street. And these uses include our fitness center, the entry with our offices, our mail and package, and then we also have another area which is sort of an internet cafe, co-work, sort of ride-sharing area. Really intended to come down and engage on those street levels. More recently, we had a meeting with the department heads where we went through this project in a lot more detail. And based on that meeting, I think internally we've agreed to provide stair access to the roof and to provide additional fall protection at the request of the fire department. We've agreed to provide fencing as needed along the train tracks in order to protect residents and other occupants. We've agreed to open up the roundings as we enter into the project, but also to make sure that the trees and other things that we're specifying are columnar and are not going to impede on any of those required fire department access. And I'm pretty sure in the agreement somewhere it'll be a requirement of management to make sure that all those are regularly trimmed and things like that. Additionally, with the fire department, we agreed to review the relocation of proposed EV chargers to outside the building for fire concern issues. Lithium batteries are very, very hard to put out. We've also talked about stormwater retention and additional snow removal procedures on the site that we're going to be going through with our civil engineer and the city as we work through the project, and that'll also be aided with the addition of these additional parcels. That should help as well. And then finally, we're going to be studying additional smoke removal measures from the garage and improving access for the fire department down to our garage. Right now, we have a 1-in, 1-out for vehicular, which they expressed a preference for 2. So, as we move forward, we want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with fire department's access to the garage. So, with that, I think that we are okay to open it up to questions.
So I'll give you, my feedback first, and some of it you've already heard from me, but I want to sort of talk about it in public session here and for the record. So the first thing we've already talked about, which is the additional 2 parcels and the access and egress, so I won't belabor that point. The one additional thing that I would put on that is, we did talk about snow removal, and there was literally no place to put the snow, and you're gonna have to truck it out of there. It seems to me that having those two parcels gives you an opportunity to think about snow removal and where you might store it on site, or so you can get it out of there later or whatever. But that seems important to me. Another thing you heard from me was the, out to Route 27, under the railroad bridge, we have a couple of catch basins. And that area has been known to flood. In fact, it flooded the other day when we had one of these gigantic downpours. I just happened to be in the downtown and I drove down there. Sure enough, it's a great big pond underneath that bridge. So your stormwater drain plan has got to be thoughtful and not overwhelm those pipes and cause, flooding to occur down there. So you're gonna have to work with the town to make sure we understand, what the current capacities are and then what the additional capacity and load on those pipes might be, okay? I mentioned to you where the pool is, and if you can put the pool picture up, just so anybody looking at home can follow this. So the pool is toward the front of the building. It is elevated to some extent, but not a lot. It has a rather open fence, and it's a rather low fence. I had two concerns there, one of which is really more your issue than ours, but just privacy and the people who might be using the pool and not, being, having people staring at them. The other one was people getting into the site by being able to climb up over that fence, and wanted to make sure that we're not gonna end up with any activity like that.
Absolutely not. I think our renderer took a little bit of leeway in terms of the pool fence. Pool fences are required to be tighter than a normal fence. Instead of 4-inch spacing, it's 3-inch spacing, and we need to get 5 or 6 feet depending on our discussions with the Board of Health. As far as privacy, I think we're probably gonna end up adding in some different levels to those sort of cabana-like structures in order to work through that privacy. And I think we actually have a little bit more changing grade than I think the rendering would indicate. But I've personally been through 4 or 5 pools, and I know what it takes to get the Board of Health and the architect, satisfied with the safety. And there's a lot of things to consider, so we definitely will address all Board of Health, public, pool concerns.
Yeah, okay, good. And so I think those were my major ones. I think anything else that I mentioned on that day is gonna get covered by, the planning board and other, sort of site-specific things and design-specific things. So those were my biggest concerns. So let me now turn to the rest of the board and comments. Who wants to go first? Glenn?
I could jump in there, sure, why not? So I guess my first question is, I'm just curious, so you talked about a lot about, it sounds like the town department heads had a lot of feedback for you, and you talked about how you responded to most of those things. Was there anything from DPW, police, fire, that you didn't think was reasonable, that you weren't able to incorporate into the plan, or was there any sticking points, I guess is what I'm asking? And I could ask the town that too, but I would start by asking you guys.
I would generally say, I will say this, right, we started initial dialogue, and it was an iterative process, right?
Sure.
So I think we had brought back some solutions, got additional commentary, and ultimately landed here. So
Okay.
I don't think
So far, so
anything
good.
that we really went through from that whole department head review presented an issue from a design standpoint. I think there are a lot of good points, and I think a lot of them were even forward thoughting, meaning we would get into that at the ZBA. ZBA might raise that as we go through the process. Now we have the advantage of having that feedback, so quite frankly, we're gonna start that dialogue and advance that design refinement even as soon as we get, or I should say, I don't wanna be presumptuous, but if we were to get the support of the town to proceed with a LIP, we'd wanna engage, while the HCD was doing their review. The one piece is, once our application goes in, it's usually about 100 to 120 days for DHCD review and give site approval before we would commence the actual ZBA process.
Yeah.
So during that, if we can, we want to move forward and advance all of that while we have some really good time and while we have the attention.
So you're talking about process, I can just jump and piggyback on that. The thing that struck me was that, so I understand that you're gonna apply with the ZBA, for a permit, but you mentioned the planning board and site plan review. That seemed unusual to me.
Oh,
That,
I'm sorry,
okay. It struck me as not being part of the process normally.
Working on something with someone else in a planning board, I
Okay,
apologize.
so no planning board in this
Feels so
process.
crushing.
I understand that. Okay, so it's very typical to any other 40B.
Yes, it's
pretty
very,
well.
very typical. We
Okay.
engage, the nice piece is we get this feedback at the beginning, we get the state approval on the site eligibility, and then when we commence the normal review process, the benefit is we're actually not responding for the first time, we're actually refining and actually probably ending up with a lot better process because we spent that much more time before we got there, then those meetings are constructive for further.
That makes a lot of sense, so, and thanks for clarifying that. So can I clarify on the affordable component? This is gonna be an all rental,
Yes, all
building,
rental, all rental.
which
projects.
allows us to get full credit for every unit toward our 10%.
That is correct. Every one of the 142 units
Yeah.
would be credited towards that. If it was a condominium project, only the number.
Right.
It's a use.
Yeah, so that's a big plus, and I just wanted to point that out. You're also improving the site in a significant way, so I appreciate that about this project. I think there's really no negative to kind of bringing up a better use for this property. So I appreciate that. You mentioned the connectivity to potentially the CVS Plaza, and by connectivity, just I don't want to put a big building and say no one can ever walk through this property ever again. It's private property, but it would be nice to have an easement where, let's say CVS Plaza someday, 10 years from now, even longer, big picture, was redeveloped. It would be nice to have planned ahead and to have created a path for people who are coming up 1A and want to get to the train station. Instead of making that longer route, there's just a direct connection. Connections are always good, in my opinion. So I appreciate you.
We agree 100%. I thought
Yeah.
that was a great comment that you guys had raised to us. And again, that's the benefit of having people even closer to it than us earlier in the process.
Sure. So overall, my comment is I think the project looks like it's going in the right direction. It's going to be a benefit to the town, both in the affordable aspect, adding residential component to the downtown area, and it's just going to be a big improvement. So it looks like it's going in the right direction, so I support it.
Thanks, Glenn.
Yeah.
Ellie?
Thank you. So Glenn hit some of the points I wanted to ask about. The reduction of 148 to 142, can you kind of go down through the breakdown of the 1, 2, 3-bedroom units and where, was there a decrease with those units?
Yeah, I'll let Steve do that while he grabs that. The reduction in the units in part came from the desire and the orientation to have full access around the building and the walking path that Steve mentioned from the fire department, plus creating a buffer off of the fence line. So although we could build up closer to that under the zoning with that guidance, so in the way that matched the building and stuff, it reduced a few of the units. Just as far as the feedback, it wasn't there was any specific magic to one number or the other. It was just when we had to make that change in design and pulled it back from that
Reorient
side
it.
and the street side, we lost a few units from our original design.
And the town's fire trucks have a little bit wider turn radius than the standard, so when you add that up, we ended up shortening one of the wings, which reduced the count. But we've got 10% studios, 10% 3-bedrooms, about 60% 1-bedrooms, and 20% 2-bedrooms. If that was your question.
Yes, just curious, just because of where it is and the school impact and, family sizes. I find when there's 3 bedrooms, often you have more children on site, which then feeds into a school that is, kind of getting crowded. The other part is the parking. So 142 units and 172 parking. What is the formula to use to me that still seems slightly low?
We can go back. We did a comparison of two things. One of the two other projects at Liberty Place and I apologize, at Union and West. And if you look at those ratios, Union and West is at 1.22, the Liberty Station is at 139. We've heard some indication that Liberty Station is having some parking issues, which doesn't seem to be rational based on the fact that they have greater than the Union and West project. Union and West, we've had discussions with Corcoran. They are not in an issue where they don't have enough parking for their tenancy. So from that end, we think the ratio is there. I can also tell you, we did a project at the Framingham train station, literally very similar type of location, but still the recognition that there are people who suburban work and drive and go back and forth, and we're less than a 1.1 on that. part of this is that unit mix, and I think that's important to understand, is with us being 60% like one bedrooms and another 10% of studios, that's a heavy weighting towards that kind of, I'll call it studio and one bedroom class. So usually you're talking about a single car or less for that. So that has a factor to do that. It's also what we believe is really key to kind of the need for this type of housing. This is to drive professionals to support the aspect of housing needed for companies and a lot of that transitional that comes in and out. 10% is required by the state, whether under a LIP or whether under Chapter 40B. You must have 10% 3-bedroom units. Generally, I can tell you, when we've looked at this, you'd be surprised at how few students are in that as a result. And we don't intentionally not want students, but what we're more focused is designing to what we think the need and the appetite is, which we think is smaller studios, 1 bedrooms, for that type of a service, as well as 2 bedrooms. But we don't anticipate this to be a large family driven. Locationally, it's different too. If you go into a more suburban location that doesn't have the aspects that this does, you'll often also find those being greater weighted towards 2 and 3 bedrooms and larger unit sizes. But like I said, from our experience in Framingham, we're under a 1.1 with a relatively similar mix. We have no 3 bedrooms. I will highlight that on that project. But otherwise, it's 80% studios and 1 bedrooms, 20% 2 bedrooms, and we're under a 1.1. We're not having any parking issues there either. So we are sizing the metric both against who's in the neighborhood, but also personal experience in very similar circumstances.
And Justin, I believe when we were back discussing that ratio, we internally discussed it a lot. There had been a memo that had come out from the town that advocated for a 1-to-1 parking ratio, which we didn't think would support the project in the suburban area. So that's why we pushed it to the 1.21, and we're hoping that everyone can get on board with that product.
Well, the last piece, accessibility. With this being a friendly 40B, are there units that will be fully accessible?
Yes.
Or the percentage?
5%.
5%.
And then there's the 2% for the audio and visual impaired as well. Those are required in Massachusetts, both of those.
And then my final question is, so 5 stories and moving that first level down to street level, garage underneath, standing this compared to some of the 2 other developments, will this still stand taller?
It's really got its shortest height along East Street. As the site dips down, that's where you start to really expose that lower level. So it reads like a 5-story from the street, and we've pulled it back and angled it in order to really diminish that height. If I can go back to.
But if you look at it, I think generally the 65 to 61 foot is kind of the set along all of the buildings. So what we tried to do was largely manage that. And as Steve said, because of the way the grade sets back, we don't, in our opinion, read any differently. But if you will look at that, those additional projects are within 3 or 4 feet of what we are, but they're actually in different locations. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, so 59 feet for Liberty, 64 for Union and West, and then we're in and around 66.8, but obviously shorter along, East Street. And I think when you drive by these other projects, they feel a lot taller because they're right up against the street, whereas we've gone and, made these sort of niches which really pull that back in and get away from that sort of, urban wall feel that we think some of these other projects have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So in an effort not to repeat a bunch of what was said, I do want to highlight something that was mentioned right out at the outset, which is that this has been a long process where you've gotten with the town department heads, you've spoken with Jim Johnson, you've spoken with some of us, you've spoken with a lot of folks in the town about this, and that it's an iterative process up to this point. It's going to continue to be an iterative process, should we enter into the LIP and go that route. And so I just want to highlight that for residents who may be listening at home, or maybe have not followed it up to this point. It's not just starting now, it's been going on for a while and will continue. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. And I did want to mention that I appreciate kind of the massing and the feel from East Street that you all have assessed and that we were just talking about. It's a massive improvement over the initial, what you guys came to. So I really do think it looks good, and I think that the feel with the parks and a little bit more green space is a really big deal. And I would just wrap up by saying that, yeah, we were talking a little bit about the parking ratio. I think you said it's at 1.21 right now. Would love to see it stay at that or even below. And I think it's going to be really important as the conversation goes forward, if it does through the LIP and the town and the ZBA, that you guys continue to bring, the data that you have, right, and the information that you have from other projects, what other people are doing, what other projects in town have been finding. I think people need to understand that, because a lot of us have this mindset of, well, we're in suburbia, every house has 2 cars, and everyone thinks that, and that's just not true anymore, right? So I think that's just going to be a really important point of communication for you all to make sure that we get that right on this project. That's it for me, Jim.
I think what Ben is saying, and I'm just going to repeat it for his sake and for my sake, is that there's going to be some pressure to get those numbers and just to pave everything and to get more parking spaces, because it's just not going to be enough. And when you get that pressure, and repeating what Ben just said, but be prepared to have studies that the state has done. There's plenty of data out there. I am literally repeating what Ben said, but I think it's worth repeating. There's plenty of data out there to push back as needed. And if you just get pushed to more parking, there needs to be data driven. So.
And to repeat what Ben said, one other aspect,
Yeah,
which
sure.
I think is
Let's just keep
actually
doing it.
fair, but for the community, in a normal process, if we were to file under a 40B, we might have a general conversation with the town, but it would be, hey, we're gonna go to the state, we're filing, you're under your 10, we're not having much of this dialogue. That's a week or 2 conversation. It's a heads up before we go file. It's not the almost a year we've spent with the department
Right.
heads and stuff really refining, which, like I said, everybody takes a different approach. We like this approach because I think we're even proud of the building that I would say we've kind of collaborated on making it fit properly in the community, and the feedback we can get from you is very important to date for us over that time period, and it'll be going forward. But just as you said, we've been talking about this and making sure we're smart about it, and you've been telling us the things that are really, as I said, the time that's come, led by Town Manager Johnson, and also the collaboration and feedback that you guys have provided through the department heads and the department heads' efforts, because it's been great. And like I said, I think we're really excited about the project that's involved.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, so just to move us forward, what I like about the project is the collaborative nature of it. I agree with the point on the design that where you started, where we're ending is very different. And I think it's working from a variety of different angles, not just aesthetics, but also just the way that it connects with the community. And I think picking up those parcels is just a crucial part of this thing. So, also I think the location's great. The downside obviously is the height. We've talked about it. And I get the point that it's a little lower on the East Street side because of the grade and all that, so how it feels. And I think the sawtooth thing that you did helps a lot as well. But it's still a big building, and that's something that's going to trouble some people. So my expectation as we get prepared to take a vote here is that you'll take all the feedback that you've been given, and the iterative process will continue. That you'll factor all of these comments into the final designs as they come forward, and together we'll get the right answer into that space. So with that said, Ally, if I could ask you for a motion, please.
Yes, motion to authorize the town administrator to address any issues or items the select board identified tonight and work with the developer to draft an MOA to present to the select board at a future meeting.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, it's after 8 o'clock and time for open forum. Who do we have here for open forum? Please come on up and give us your name and comment.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Matt Sheehan and I'm running for Norfolk County Commissioner. I graduated from Norfolk Aggie in 2003, and I'm on the board of trustees at the school. As my campaign gets bigger, more and more people are finding out about the solar project with regards to North Street and Fisher Street. This land is sacred to me and everyone else who went to the school. It's a recreational space that I use regularly, and yeah, just wanted to let you guys know that, you know, I'm getting the word out, and I appreciate, you know, everything you guys have done going forward with this process. And, you know, I hope, my goal is to make sure that they install it on all the existing infrastructure that they have, parking lots, roofs, before they cut down a single tree or cover a single acre of that beautiful green space. So thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself. And I'm an airline pilot, and I fly for Above the Clouds Kids, and we took Tyler Fergeron flying. I know he's a pretty popular guy here in Walpole. So this is very important to me, and I just wanted to introduce myself.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Anyone else?
Happy to say a few words to start with.
Yeah.
Come on up. Absolutely.
Hi, good evening. My name is Hemali Patel. I live on Susan Drive. I have, my house is abutting the property that is proposed for solar panels, and my backyard runs parallel to the proposed field. So it's very concerning at how the decision has been, you know, like how they decided to use this property instead of every other property that the Norfolk County owns. We have not been able to understand that process or get an agreement from multiple public hearings that we have attended so far in the last few months. And for those that are in power to vote for this, seem extremely disengaged when we attend public hearings. It is strictly a one-side conversation. They don't, I understand the nature of public meetings, you know, they don't answer questions we ask or anything of that nature. When we ask them if such opportunity would be available, we are told that it's not necessary to have it. So, you know, that makes it even more concerning, knowing that there is a vote that we are told will happen in 60 days from the last public meeting. And the last public hearing was on August 29th. So that it feels like we are running against time here, and those that we are seeking, you know, their guidance or their sort of, you know, this is not a good idea, like thousands of times that we have said that. There is no obligation that seems to me on their end to share their thoughts, their updates, or no indication that they're going to listen to the residents, not just of the town of Walpole, but other neighboring towns that have also now started attending the public hearings that we have. And as residents of this town, that is very concerning because, you know, we are concerned and not sure what to do about this, except to support those who will help us stop this. So that's why I'm here with Matt Shannon. He, you know, I believe he will be the person, and I'm not here to advocate for him or anything, but I'm just saying that at this point, residents don't know what to do because it feels like our voice is just running against deaf ears, and we have no bi-directional dialogue with them. And I just wanted to come here and share that thoughts with you. I know I trust you, you know, and I am looking for any guidance that you may have for people like me who are in the immediate neighborhood of the property, but also in general. There is a lot of chaos. There's a lot of concern in the town. We have heard from at least 30 residents at the last public hearing meeting on August 29th. Maybe 2 spoke in favor. Majority of us do not want this, and it doesn't seem to have made any progress. So I appreciate your time. And if there's anything that you can share with us or do for us, that would be truly appreciated.
So I'll share a few things with you. And normally we don't get into a lot of discussion at open forum, and it's not my intent to do that, but I do think this is one of those issues that requires some kind of response. So I'd start by saying there are 2 projects. There's one on North Street, there's one that's down behind the Aggie School, which is where you live. And both of those came to us because we had the, quote, opportunity on very short notice, I might say, to basically buy out the lease that, you know, the county is looking to enter into with Kearsarge, who is the solar developer. We thought about it hard and long, we talked about it, we debated it, we concluded that spending millions of dollars and not getting anything for it, except being able to prevent this from happening, wasn't really in the best interest of the taxpayers down at Walpole. So we did not do that. I would also tell you, I think it would be very hard of us to have done that, because given the time that they allotted for us, we would have had to have done a town meeting to appropriate the money and all that kind of stuff. And so it was, we were really put in a very, very bad position. And I understand it's the process, and that's what they would tell us and all that, but it really wasn't done well in my mind. The second thing I would share with you is we have provided a lot of feedback to the county commissioners. They were here one night with Kearsarge. We gave them a ton of feedback on the North Street, proposal. And this board clearly stated that we didn't support it, that we didn't like it, that we didn't think it was the right place for it, that we didn't see it fitting in with the educational aspects of the school. And I won't go drain all the reasons, you know them well. But we said all those things to them. I felt that they were not really hearing us, and I think they were just pushing ahead, and that seems to have been the subsequent case. We did send them a letter telling them what we thought. We've involved our state reps, senator, in the process. I think you know that as well. We've done the same thing on the parcel, the second parcel that we're talking about now behind the agricultural school. The North Street proposal right now is before the courts. And that's because our zoning board turned down their request for a permit to build out the proposed site. And that was, in my judgment, that was the right answer. So it's before the courts now. I think all the arguments have been made. I believe it's with the judge at this point, taking under advisement. It's our understanding that could take a few months to decide. I don't know how the outcome is going to go. I'd like to be optimistic about it, but I've seen a lot of this stuff, and it's sometimes it's hard to be optimistic. But we got to wait and see how that comes down. I would say that the second piece is now behind the first piece, and my guess is that we'll end up following a similar track, depending on how the court decides. What I would offer to you is this, because you're here asking us what more could we do. I went through that to say we've done a lot. We've done we've done all the right things, we think. And I think there's not a lot more for us to do. But what we can do, I wasn't able to attend that public hearing on the 29th. And by the way, I've run a lot of public hearings in my life. We definitely answer questions in our public hearings if they come to us.
That is news to me.
Yeah, so I don't know.
It's on YouTube. It's made for TV, for
Yeah,
sure.
so I don't know where that whole thing comes from, but we answer questions. I feel it's our obligation to answer questions about projects when we hold a public hearing.
Exactly.
So I did watch it on YouTube. You're right, I watched it. I wasn't able to be there, but I did watch the whole thing. And I was particularly distressed by this whole discussion about we're not here to answer questions, we're here to get feedback, okay? What I would be willing to do, and with the support of the board, is send yet another letter to the commissioners, inviting them to come into a session with us here to do exactly that, to answer questions. Now, I can't compel them to come in, and they deferred coming in on another meeting that we asked them to come in on. So I don't know how they'll respond to that, but we can certainly put it to them and say, we think it's important to answer the questions of the residents, but it can't be just one of these FAQ deals where it's on a piece of paper and there's no follow-up questioning, right?
Correct.
So this has to be a true, I need to get my questions answered, and if I have follow-ups, I need to be able to ask the follow-ups. So again, and I'll check with the board in a minute, but, that'd be my view, is let's get a letter off to the county commissioners, invite them in, give them the opportunity in a Walpole forum to address this, I think, very important question of getting the feedback, and doing the question and answer in an iterative fashion. And I'd also like to engage our state reps and our senator in that dialogue. So I'd offer that up if that is the pleasure of the board. Anybody have a concern about that?
I make that motion.
Okay?
And I won't go down the same path. You did a very good job summarizing the issues and how there are two different projects, the concerns from the residents, whether they're being addressed. So I won't go down that path. I will just throw out there that, for my part, going back to 2020, they actually had a public hearing in November of 2020 that I spoke at before I was elected on this board. And leading up to that, there were just a lot of concerns, and they continue to this day. So I, for the last 2 years, have gone out to behind the Aggie, and I've given tours. I've given walking tours. I feel like I've given 100 of them. It's probably been 25, but it feels like I've given 100 walking tours to anybody in
I
town.
would have waved to you from my
Yeah.
dining room.
So originally it was sited in the woods, and then we gave them feedback, and eventually they moved it to a field. And it's 150 acres behind the Aggie, and none of it deserves to have solar panels. And I think that's what the neighbors are concerned about. And so I brought as many people out there to show them the spot, because it's I feel like seeing is believing sometimes. And anyways, that's my tangent, but I think I agree with your idea to send them a letter.
That would be so helpful.
Okay.
We have heard endless times. They talk the language of a lawyer and have no intentions of actually listening. And that puts us in such a bad, right from the beginning, we are all just ready to yell and shout. That is not how we do things. That is, I have spoken on behalf of Walpole. I said, this town does not work like that. We do not put up concerns and not have answered, provided. This town is known for being friendly and all-inclusive. And I don't understand how you can come, yes, you are the county, but this is still our town. And I don't understand how you are not, reliable enough to follow the pattern that we have in the town. This is our expectation. This is who we are.
So-
We did not make any difference.
So-
I'll make a motion. if you
Okay,
want.
we have a motion.
I'll make a motion that we send a letter to the county commissioners requesting that they come visit us at this Walpole Select Board to have a meaningful discussion and to answer questions from the concerned residents about the solar panel proposal.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400. We'll do that.
Thank you so much.
Again, I can't guarantee that will turn into anything more than just getting them a letter. We've seen how this process works, but we will give it a shot, okay?
That is all we ask for.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for coming tonight.
Thank you for coming
Okay,
tonight.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Nice to
Thank
meet you guys.
same. Okay, that gets us out of our appointments section. We're on to new business. So I think we're on to proposed snowplow rates for 2022-23. Jim?
Sure. Rick's here tonight and kind of follow up with this, but this is coming to you from Director Mattson and Drew Hand, who serves as our highway superintendent. Rick and Drew did a lot of work over the summer on this. As you might expect, insurance prices have gone up, gas and diesel fuel has gone up, and we need to remain competitive with the surrounding towns in the state. So what we're proposing here is some increase in the hourly rates and a guaranteed season minimum. I'm not as concerned with the guaranteed season minimum. We haven't done that before, but we went back and checked, and we would have hit that minimum regardless over the last 5 years or so. So that's not going to be a problem. At least the snowplow contractors who come in can at least have a guaranteed number up there that they're going to. I think the insurance is probably, about $5,000 a vehicle, give or take, plus or minus.
That's what they're telling us.
Yeah, so my father used to snowplow on Route 2 in Arlington with his trucks, and he stopped doing it because this past year because it was going to be $5,000 a truck, so it's just not worth it to some of these guys, and I understand why. So this minimum, it's only a $1,500 minimum for the smaller trucks, and as high as a $1,750 minimum
So it's not that significant, but we need to do this to stay competitive and make sure we continue to get snowplow operators in here. We only call the operators once our DPW is out, probably, does he call them after 3 or 5 inches?
It depends
what
on
type
the
of
storm, yeah, exactly. If it's a relatively small storm, we may not call them.
Yeah,
But we usually use 3 inches and look at the duration of the storm
yeah.
to make the call. It
So-
varies.
That's why we're here today, so we can get out and get ahead of this and continue to try to get contractors in here. Anything to add, Rick?
No, you graciously increased the rates in 2020 because of the same problem that we're having today. At that point in time, we had, I believe, 24 contractors and 53 pieces of equipment under contract. Last snowplow season, we had 17 contractors and 39 pieces. So they're slowly either stopping the operation altogether, or they're moving to other cities and towns. And the rates that you have before you are an average of our 2 largest competitors, Norwood and Franklin. So that's how we came up with the rates.
Right. I know we also have in here the guaranteed minimum language.
Right.
I might be a little thick here, but I was actually struggling a little bit with what it actually means, especially the example.
If not, the guaranteed minimum is per piece of equipment that the contractor provides.
Right.
So if they provide 1 piece of equipment, they're guaranteed that the town will pay them $1,500 if 1 flake doesn't fly and we don't call them. Now, if they come in and work, say, a 15-hour storm at $100 an hour, that obligation, that minimum guarantee has been met. So we don't need to
Because
pay
we're
them
actually
further.
paying them the $100 an hour times the 15 hours.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right,
that's
so
helpful.
their minimum is met.
But if they don't plow,
If they don't plow at all, we have to pay them, like in category 1, $1,500.
the minimum, you still, even if they don't plow, okay.
Right. And if
And
not
is it-
once one
and-
flake flies, that's cost us what?
And is that per storm or is that per season?
No, it's per season,
Okay,
per piece of
okay,
equipment.
okay,
So
Okay,
for somebody
I'm
that
good.
provides 1 pickup truck,
yeah,
it'd be $1,500 guaranteed.
okay, perfect, okay. Any other questions for Rick?
I have
Yeah,
a question, yeah. And so who, is somebody gonna be entrusted with like tracking that? How's
Yes,
that?
the highway superintendent will track the hours.
Okay, somebody actually,
Right.
through license
provide
plates or
invoices.
whatever.
Well, Drew and Justin drive around checking on the
That's what I
contractors.
mean,
the whole
yeah.
storm.
Yeah,
The different
okay.
routes and everything.
Well, sounds like a lot of work, so,
It
but they
is.
gotta do it anyways, I guess, so,
Mhm.
okay, all right. And then my other question would be, I mean, is this enough? I mean, you said you've averaged the 2.
I think they're pretty competitive.
Yeah.
The vast majority of our equipment is in the first 2 categories,
Yeah.
the 4-wheel and 6-wheel. That's where about 60% of the equipment is.
Yeah,
And those are pretty favorable rates,
Yeah.
I think.
okay, thank you.
I was just gonna ask, is this approach of the minimal, similar to other towns attempting this?
Other towns they vary. The town of Franklin offers a sign-on bonus. $2,000 up front to sign on, $2,000 at the end if you stay. I'm not a big fan of that approach. That's why we offered the guaranteed minimums. Norwood has neither an incentive to sign on or a guaranteed minimum. They just have a little bit higher rate.
Okay, all set, Ben, anything? Okay, all right, I'll entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve the snowplow rates for 2022, 2023 as presented.
Seconded.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, we've got a couple of contracts to award. Jim?
Sure. Recommend favorable action for bid contract number 23-03, the sewer system improvement project. We received multiple bids on this one. After vetting everything, recommendation is to go with Green Mountain Pipeline Services LLC for the lowest price of $798,798.
Okay, questions for Jim? Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to award 2023-03, 2022 sewer system improvement project to Green Mountain Pipeline Service LLC.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400.
I don't have the second. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, next bid up is award for the sewer water treatment chemicals. Bid number 23-05. There's multiple vendors here between Univar Solutions, Holland Company, and GAC Corp., and I'd recommend favorable action and award it to the lowest bidders here, as listed.
Questions for Jim?
Motion to award 2023-05 water treatment chemicals to various contractors as listed on memo dated September 6, 2022.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400. Okay, we're on to the fall town meeting warrant articles. What I'd like to do is go through them all and vote them all tonight if we possibly can.
So earlier, actually yesterday, I prepared a memo for the select board, briefly outlining each of the articles, and the finance committee vote on each article, and I would point out that they've met over the last few weeks, voted and vetted all of the articles, so if you're okay with it, I'll just start with Article 2, which is the in-year budget adjustment. We're looking for some additional funds for a legal town clerk salary, the finance department salary line, board of assessors salary line, police, gas diesel, fire gas diesel, cemetery gas diesel, and parks gas diesel as listed. Total amount requested is $217,500. The proposed recommended funding source is $167,500 from taxation and $50,000 from Board of Assessors overlay account. Take any questions you may have.
Questions for Jim? Okay, do we want to, let's just vote on one at a time?
Yeah, that'd be great, yeah.
Okay, so, Ally?
Motion to recommend favorable action on article number 2.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400.
Article 3 is the OPEB transfer from free cash to the OPEB fund. Current fund has about $7.7 million in there. Finance Committee is recommending $1 million from free cash be transferred into this line. They voted favorable action 10-1.
Questions?
Jim, my question was, does this go along with what was recommended years ago jointly with the Finance Committee and the Select Board?
It far exceeds it.
Way over
If
it.
we took that formula, it'd be about $757,000, so they exceeded it there.
So the votes that were against this article, do you know the reasoning of Finance?
Initially, my recommendation was $850,000, and a few members came to me before the meeting and asked, could we bump it up a little bit more? I suggested, do you want to make it an even $1 million? And I think the fewer members were opposed to that, so they wanted to keep the $850, but carried.
Further questions for Jim? Ally?
Motion to recommend favorable action on article number 3.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400.
Article 4 is a stabilization fund, which recommended $650,000 from free cash be placed into the stabilization fund. Current balance there is $9,603,000. Finance Committee voted favorable action 13-0-0.
Questions? Ally?
Nope. Motion to recommend favorable action on article number 4.
I'll second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400.
Next item up is the capital stabilization. Finance Committee recommended $1,150,000 from free cash into this account. Current balance in that account is $1,353,000. Finance Committee voted 10-3-0 favorable action on this article. There was a considerable amount of discussion on this one. Initially, we were going to roll forward about $3.1 million in free cash. Some committee members wanted to see that funds, about 500 additional, go towards capital stabilization. Others expressed concern about what if funds are needed in the spring for the schools. So I think that was the 3 opposing votes there. So but they did vote 10-3-0 to recommend it.
Thanks, Jim. Questions for Jim? Okay, Ally?
Motion to recommend favorable action on article number 5.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400.
So next few items up is the capital articles here. And honestly, these capital items gathered the most amount of discussion. We were there, I think, until 10 or 10:30 that night. And I know some of the Finance Committee members, it was their first time actually voting on any Finance Committee articles. So Article 6 had a considerable amount of discussion. That was our capital infrastructure. I believe you have the request list there. They recommend favorable action, 8-4-0 on this article. A lot of it centered around should we put more money towards the schools, or should it go towards the HVAC project? But ultimately, it passed 8-4-0.
Questions for Jim? Ally?
Motion to recommend favorable action on Article number 6.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400.
Article 7 is capital equipment. The Finance Committee recommended favorable action, 11-1-0 on this one.
Any questions? Ally?
Motion to recommend favorable action on Article number 7.
Seconded.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. 400.
Article 8 is capital paving improvements. Once again, Finance Committee recommended favorable action on this article, 12-0-0.
Questions? Ally?
Motion to recommend favorable action on Article number 8.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. 400.
Next one is Article 9, the water capital, the various requests that this board actually discussed a few weeks ago with the sewer and water commissioners. Finance Committee recommended favorable action, 12-0-0.
Questions?
I would just say one thing,
Go ahead.
just based on what Jim just said, we've discussed all of these, many of them ad nauseum. So if anyone's watching this and wonders what any of these is specifically, relevant to, then please reach out and we can talk further about it. But that's why we're not talking about it now. That's all.
Ally?
Motion to recommend favorable action on Article number 9.
Seconded.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400.
Article 10 is the sewer capital, and the only item funded there is $50,000 towards a backhoe replacement. The other $100,000 is coming out of water department, and they recommended favorable action, 12-0-0 on this.
Any questions? Ally?
Motion to recommend favorable action on Article number 10.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400.
Article 11 is the water borrowing, and again, this board talked about it a lot over the summer, in your desire to move forward with the water main replacement and the redundant line for the central storage. The commissioners were fully supportive of it, and the Finance Committee was fully supportive at 12-0-0 favorable action.
Questions?
Motion to recommend favorable action on Article number 11.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. 400.
Next up is the sewer grant. This article covers the inflow and infiltration grant program offered by the MWRA. This authorization will be for phase 12 and 13. It's been going on that long. It's a financial assistance program that Walpole has utilized over the last year. It's actually coming to an end soon. Each of the phases are $810,000, which in phase 12, it's 75 as a grant, 25% as a loan, but phase 13, it's gonna be a I believe it's 0% interest loan. So for the commissioners to pay back. So recommend favorable action. The commissioners were supportive of it too. FinCom approved it 12-0-0.
Any questions? Well, one thing that would be interesting is over the years, we've done this, to your point, it would be interesting to get some kind of a metric on, just how much we've improved the I&I situation as a result of
Significantly,
this
but I can
work.
get the specifics.
Yeah,
It's actually harder for us to find
Yeah,
where we're losing
Yeah.
the water.
I mean, there was a time when stormwater just went right into the sewers. So, I mean, if you want to compare it to like,
Yeah.
the 80s or whatever, but, certainly it's
well,
leaps-
since
leaps
we've
and
been doing
bounds.
this I&I work is what I'm interested in, and I know it's been a significant improvement, but I don't
Right.
think we've taken the time to actually say, how much of an improvement.
It's a
Sure.
tight system, yeah.
Yeah,
Our water loss is low.
Yeah.
If Rick was here, he could talk about it, but it's under 10%. So it's very healthy.
Okay,
But yeah, I agree. I would like to hear some
Yeah.
hard data.
Ally?
Motion to recommend favorable action on Article number 12.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 400.
Next one is the supplemental funds for the school budget, which includes $665, $755 for the Medicaid reimbursements, $31,700 for parking for the students, and $1,600 for McKinney-Vento for a grand total of $699, $55,000. Recommended action was 13-0-0 favorable action.
Questions for Jim? Ally?
Motion for favorable action on Article 13.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400.
Next up is the revolving funds. This is something that came up during the bylaw committee's discussion. We're doing it as a separate article because that is the way we did it prior to the pandemic, so what we're looking to do here is increase the amount in the Turco Field Maintenance Fund. We're actually changing the name to that fund to the Synthetic Field Maintenance Synthetic Field Maintenance and Turf Replacement Fund. That's $1,500,000. We're getting rid of the net metering fund because we were advised by the auditors we should account for that differently, which we are in this current budget. $50,000 for an electronic vehicle charging station and $20,000 for Adams Farm fees. So FinCom recommended 1200, favorable action on this.
When you get rid of the net metering fund, the $1.3 million, there's actual money, money's in the account, right?
Well, no, what would happen each year,
Okay.
we would take,
So you start at
the
zero?
town got 27% of it. The reason we set it at 1,300,000
Yeah.
is because we set it at heights we can't, we hopefully we'll have 1,500,000 eventually in the Turco field.
Yeah.
If it gets close to that, we're gonna have to come and raise that. But the 1,300,000, we haven't even gotten close to there. And what
Okay.
the agreement was is we take in 100% of the net metering credits. Town of Walpole would keep 27% of it. We give out 73% of it back to the solar company, the agreement that we signed in 16. The accountants have advised they don't want it done this way anymore. They want it shown as a local receipt and then a payout.
Got
So
it.
Yeah.
can't be treated as a revolving
Yeah,
fund
makes
anymore.
sense. Okay, any other questions for Jim? Ally?
Motion for favorable action on Article number 14.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
I'm going to
400.
abstain.
Oops, sorry, 301. Thank you, Ally.
And next up, Ally, feel free to jump in on this one. Ally put a lot of work into this as the chair of the bylaw committee here, a lot of time too. And what we're proposing here, there's multiple changes that are being requested. And what we are going to present to town meeting is, as part of that packet, the sections that are being deleted or the strike through in it, but in the language, we want to present it as one article, so we just simply said, like Article, Chapter 22, Building Maintenance Advisory Committee, delete entire chapter. And in Ally's explanation, she explains why it's no longer needed and shows a sample of it. We just didn't want to get bogged down in strike throughs and everything else as part of the actual warrant. It would go on forever. So Ally, did I miss anything?
I mean, the general purpose of the bylaw review was just to make sure that it was in gender-neutral language, current practices, and we really reached out to all department heads that these different chapters, impacted, asked for their input, town council reviewed it. We spent a good solid 9 months on it. So pretty minor changes for the chapters of the bylaws that are recommended, and this is just the first section of the administrative bylaws.
Thanks for doing it.
Okay,
Do you want to make the motion?
any questions?
I'll make the motion.
Ally?
Motion for favorable action on Article number 15,
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
and I'm going to abstain from this one as well.
301. Thanks, Ally, and thanks for the great work on that.
That's it.
Okay. Next is the 2023 Select Board meeting schedule. Any discussion on that? Ally?
Motion to approve the 2023 Select Board meeting schedule as presented.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400. We have a reappointment of Jean Kenny and Rich McCarthy to the Walpole Media Corporation. Ally?
Motion to reappoint Jean Kenny and Richard McCarthy to the Walpole Media Corporation.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400. Likewise, promote Doug Shea to a regular member of Rec Committee. Ally?
Motion to promote Doug Shea to a regular member of the Recreation Committee.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400. We have a resignation. Ally?
Motion to accept the resignation of Ted Hegler from the Adams Farm Committee.
Second.
Hey, before we vote that, just wanted to note that Ted goes back to the very beginning on that Adams Farm Committee. So we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of the acquisition of the Adams Farm, and Ted was instrumental way back in the beginning to help that get through the town, and we've seen what an incredible, gem Adams Farm has become for the town. And so I want to just express my appreciation, and I'm sure on behalf of the rest of the board, to Ted for the many years of work that he put into the Adams Farm Committee, and the many other things Ted has done for the town over the years. So Ted, thanks very much. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I assume we'll send a letter, to with regrets.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. All right. We have Roy Nepple, one-day wine and malt beverage license. I can say it. Ally, just go to the motion.
Motion to approve request of Roy Napel for a one-day wine and malt beverage license on Saturday, September 24th, 2022, from 11:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Adams Farm as part of their 25th anniversary celebration.
Second.
That's well said, Ally. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400. Consent agenda?
Motion to accept it with gratitude the following donations from Edwin and Linda Winslow to the COA Gifts, Martin and Michael White to the COA Gifts, Anthony and Linda Parinelli to COA Gifts, COA Pool Players to the COA Gifts, Anonymous to COA Gifts, multiple donors in memory of Carol Lane and/or Gerald Lane to the Willett Pond Access Account.
Second, with gratitude.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
400. Town Administrator's update, Jim?
Sure. A couple of items here. South Walpole Community Athletic Complex. Earlier this week, Patrick and I were talking, and we haven't had a grand opening ceremony in some time, and we'd like to do something, and we're tentatively planning on it for Saturday, November 12th. We chose Saturday, November 12th, because that is the last day. Youth soccer is going to have their events up there. The fall season ends. We'd like to have a lot of people up there. We expect that the new snack shack will be done. The bathrooms will be opened. I'd like to have some type of ribbon cutting up there to recognize everyone who's put in a lot of work. The Friends group has certainly raised a lot of money. DPW has done great up there. The contractors have been good to work with. I'd like the board to participate. We're working on the details. Once we have more information, we'll let the board members know, but I wanted to give you some time to plan for that and set that Saturday aside. Town meeting, we're ready to go. We already started working on the motion for all the articles. High school auditoriums all booked. September 26th, the warrants being delivered to the post office. The 30th, the packets will be hand-delivered to town meeting members. So we're well ahead of schedule, and we want to get everyone out the information needed. The select board schedule for October, November, I'm mentioning this now just because we're set to meet on 10/4 and 10/25. On 10/25, it's a little earlier than expected, but Jack Fisher, I'd like to have him come in, provide the select board with a brief overview of the rate hearing process and the setting process, and then tentatively, we're set to have the rate hearing on November 8th. It's about a week earlier than what we usually do, but with the next meeting being so close to Thanksgiving, Dennis and I really want to make sure that we have enough time there to plan for it in case there's any issues that come up. Dennis has advised with the override, it may take a little bit longer than expected for this hearing to go through because the taxes will be adjusted, and Jack wants to make sure he thoroughly explains it. So that's where we're at for October and November. FinCom, they wrapped up their deliberations and their votes, but at the end of their meeting, they did say they would like to have a joint meeting with the select board and the school committee to discuss going forward what are the expectations of the finance team and myself with the development of the FY24 budget. So we haven't set a date on that one, but we're looking sometime between shortly after town meeting and beginning of December. I told them I'd really like it to be before December 1st so I can have it in the budget directives and know what my marching orders are from everyone involved in the process. So they seemed receptive to that idea. They'd also like to hold another meeting similar to what the select board had back, I think it was last October or November, with the two chiefs, Rick Mattson and some of the larger department heads, just to kind of lay out, we do have a lot of new members on the finance committee. They want to lay out what the department's needs are and what are they going to be asking for. I'd love to invite the select board because a lot of these people also report directly to you folks. So whenever we set that date, maybe we just post it as a joint meeting and we all sit up and they can ask their questions of the two chiefs and Rick and whomever else they'd like to come. So just food for thought for that one. And last item, the elephant in the room, which we've been bombarded with the last few days, is the MBTA Foxborough craft line. We've gotten a lot of complaints, especially today, about the line being started back up yesterday. I've actually written some letters to MassDOT officials and our state senator, and also included Senator Rush in that, and our state representatives, asking them to get involved in this process. Obviously, this has kind of come out of nowhere. They provided us with zero notice whatsoever that they're going to be starting this line back up. The Walpole lines, the service here in Walpole has been cut in half by 50%. Foxborough, I counted 8 trips in, 8 trips out on their schedule today. So it's business as usual for MassDOT. It's like I looked up the emails when Chief Kelleher was talking. I have an email from Patrick dated October 2014 when he worked for the senator. We've been fighting this fight for almost 10 years now, and we're the only ones fighting it. And the town, through the various select board members throughout the years, have just fought the fight. We've been with the residents, but we've been alone in it. And we'll continue to fight it, but I'd look to the residents, the commuters, and the businesses who have the negative impacts on this to join us. Reach out to the senators, reach out to our state reps, reach out to MassDOT officials. One of the requests I sent was, please send us the name and contact information for all the MassDOT officials who made this decision and which office you want us to direct all the complaints to, because the town officials, we've fallen on totally deaf ears. I'll continue to fight. We've testified in Boston multiple times. Again, I was the only one there with a few select board members at the time asking them not to implement the service. It was only going to be a pilot, short term, and then you have the train drive by the town of Walpole with 0 riders on it, literally, no one's on it, and our riders here are being turned away, show up for the train, and just, there's nothing there. So I'm frustrated. I know the residents are frustrated in South Walpole and along the train line. I know the commuters are frustrated because we've heard about it. So we turn to our state officials to ask them to get involved. So I've already done that. I'll take any input or directive the board wants to give me on this one. So
it seems to me that this one deserves a trip in town. So what I would like to do is figure out who the right people are to talk to about this, and then have a group of us go in and sit down with the reps and senators and hash this thing out. I think it needs to be a face-to-face. I'd suggest that you ask them to come here, but I think I know what the answer to that'll be. But they can't turn down a request to come in and meet them, and I think we should do that and express our concerns and see what we can do about resolving this.
okay, I'll try.
Other thoughts?
Well, I think you have to know who's on the other side of the table. Do we know who's on the other side of the
Well,
table?
that was my first point, is we need to find that out.
We don't.
So we don't, and so we've got to do that, but
So-
we can. and we
Glenn,
need
what
to,
I did
so.
tonight is I went through the old emails and the contact information for all the MassDOT officials I had from 18 and 19. I've already received a bunch of bounce back emails that they're no longer there, or people come and go out of those
This is where our
organizations.
state reps can
Yeah.
help us. We need to have, Johnny Rogers or somebody figure out who the right person is, and then let's get on the calendar and get in there.
And this is an executive branch, so it's under the direction of the governor, the governor's office. Is that correct, do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Expect so, yeah.
And there's probably an advisory board as well, I imagine, for the MBTA, that would probably be appointed, I assume, by the governor. I'm doing a little bit of guesswork here, but there's probably an appointed board that needs to answer to.
They were fully supportive of this decision to do the Foxborough.
So we don't want to go to the appointed board, who's probably already made up their mind, but perhaps we want to go to whoever appoints them, the appointing authority, the governor's office.
Governor's office did not take any of our meetings.
No, I mean, I think we needed the help of our state senators and the legislature and the reps to.
We need them to take the lead
To
on
guide
it,
the
sure.
process. Sure, we can't just walk into the
Yeah.
State House, I don't imagine, without some help.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate because we spent a lot of time in a couple of meetings talking about not only getting development downtown and wanting to regenerate the downtown, which is gonna require the train service to be there, but also the requirements that are gonna be coming down from the state level for MBTA corridor towns and what is expected for development downtowns. Well, how can they require us to have high-density downtowns and put requirements on us for what we must do if they're taking away our train service? I agree.
Ben, I had that same thought of
Yeah.
being completely counterproductive.
Yeah.
And Walpole's making great strides downtown.
Right,
Talked
right.
about,
So I
hundreds
think
of units today.
yeah, I think that's a good point as well.
Yeah, so let's figure it out.
So when I hear back from the state reps, when they ask me what to do, we'd like a meeting with you. We're willing to come
Yeah.
into the city and
A productive
something
meeting,
out there.
please, not a meeting for the sake of having a meeting, so it looks like we're doing something, but I'd like to actually do something. I think everybody here does, but, I mean, a productive meeting is the goal. Yeah.
I just had one other thing.
Sure, go ahead.
If you,
Yeah.
I appreciate. I just wanted to bring up for the board, to highlight to the board and also any residents that, I had talked with Jim Johnson earlier today, about a program that the town offers, called Interface, which is a mental health and wellness support referral resource. We have a link on the town website that's kind of buried in the health department's webpage. And what this service does that the town pays for is it allows for anybody from school children to seniors to go in, and you can put in your insurance, whether it's Mass Health or some employer funded insurance, and it'll set you up with whatever services you're looking for based on your insurance requirements and all of this. And it really is a critical service, I think. And from talking to Melissa Ranieri at the health department, it's used very often by residents. So getting the word out there, Mike and Jim are going to put a button on the town website on the main page so that it's more easily accessible. People can find out about it. And so I just wanted to bring that up in the meeting as well, that this is a service that we pay for. It's a wonderful service that provides support on a kind of a gap in resources. And so we want people to find out about it.
Great. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate that. Anything else?
And Ben, I would add, Mike has already tweeted it out, and it's already on the front page of our
Awesome.
website.
I was gonna just
fantastic.
mention, could that be included maybe in the school emails too?
Well, so the schools actually do a pretty thorough job, and maybe not recently. That's one of the places I first saw it, and so they push it out a lot. But I think to the general, and the COA as well, I should say, actually does a lot around it. And that's one of the biggest uses of it is folks that go to the COA. But this is kind of like the third leg of the stool, so to speak. So we'll get all of our coverage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for Jim? Motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 400. We're now adjourned. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.